Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. We hear a lot of noise about artificial intelligence lately, right? The hype, the doom and gloom, the endless tech updates, it's a lot. But today, we're cutting through all that noise. We're going to tackle the absolute most fundamental debate about our technological future. We are going to look at the foundational text of the era we're entering and really explore the deep, kind of uncomfortable tension between human capability and machine intelligence. So let's just jump right in with the most critical question of our era. Will artificial intelligence actually make humanity more intelligent, or is it going to make us weaker and more dependent? Now, it sounds like a straightforward either-or scenario, right? But the answer is incredibly complex. Because looking at the data, AI might actually do both of those things at the exact same time. And that brings us to the first major fork in the road when it comes to how AI impacts our daily mental capabilities. The research outlines this massive divergence in the human experience moving forward. It basically splits our future into two entirely different outcomes: intelligence amplification and cognitive atrophy. Okay, on the amplification side, AI is the ultimate cognitive multiplier. Literally, a single person armed with advanced AI tools can do the work that used to require entire teams. We're talking wildly faster research and analysis, real-time translation that's just shattering global language barriers, medical diagnostics and scientific discoveries happening at absolute breakneck speeds, plus hyper-personalized education for everyone. It is thrilling. But then we have to pivot to the parallel risk, the atrophy side. If we completely outsource our thinking, we're looking at reduced memory retention. Our mental muscles are literally going to get covered in cobwebs. We face a serious decline in our endurance for complex problem solving. We risk this severe over-reliance on algorithmic recommendations, which weakens our own creativity through a pervasive shortcut culture. Ultimately, it leads to way less independent critical thinking. Now, we don't even have to guess what happens when humanity outsources its brainpower to a machine, because, well, we've kind of seen a version of this movie before. Think historically for a second. The invention of the pocket calculator drastically reduced basic mental arithmetic skills for the average person. I mean, you don't memorize long division when a little device does it for you instantly, right? But at the exact same time, that device freed up our brains to make higher-level mathematics, physics, and engineering absolutely skyrocket. AI is projected to produce this exact same shift, just on a massive, unprecedented scale. We are basically trading basic execution for advanced exploration. However, to understand where this whole thing goes wrong, we gotta look at human nature. We have this natural, almost inescapable tendency to optimize our lives for absolute convenience. We always want the easiest path. And when the easiest path is a machine doing all the heavy lifting, we fall right into the trap of convenience. Just think about all the human skills we might simply stop practicing if we let an algorithm take over. Writing, summarizing complex information, designing, coding, thinking through strategic decisions. Man, even generating emotional responses to emails and texts. Because, nothing says I care about you quite like a perfectly optimized machine-generated birthday text. But seriously, if AI can do all of this flawlessly and in the blink of an eye, the temptation to just never practice these skills ourselves becomes overwhelmingly strong. Which leads us to a really heavy philosophical question. If machines think for us, will humans still learn how to think deeply? Like, if you never actually have to wrestle with a blank page, do the neural pathways required for deep, sustained thought simply wither away? And it's not just about forgetting how to write a good email. When an intellectually passive society just consumes AI-generated conclusions without any scrutiny, the foundational pillars of our civilization actually begin to crack. Education, journalism, politics, even the very fabric of democratic decision-making. If we just accept the machine's output as absolute truth because we've lost the mental endurance to verify it, well, we are in deep trouble. But listen, this isn't just a doom and gloom story about destruction. It's really about evolution. The source material makes a super vital distinction here. AI might not destroy our creative spirit. Instead, it's going to force it to radically redefine itself. We're undergoing a massive paradigm shift. In the past, value was created by doing all the labor. You were the one typing the code, painting the canvas, crunching the endless spreadsheets. Moving forward, the new paradigm is all about directing intelligent systems. The person who knows how to frame the right problem is about to become exponentially more valuable than the person who just performs repetitive execution. You are no longer the one playing the instrument. You become the conductor of the entire orchestra. So what exactly is in this new human toolkit required to succeed alongside AI? Well, the future of work looks a lot like this, asking much better questions, synthesizing completely disparate ideas, exercising strategic judgment, ethical reasoning, emotional intelligence, and, crucially, maintaining an original vision. These are the inherently human traits that the machine just cannot replicate. These are the absolutely crucial skills of the director. But we have to zoom out from the individual level for a second to examine the macro societal risks of over-reliance. Because if we don't develop those high-level skills, we fall into dependency. And dependency, it comes with a steep, steep cost. The more humanity relies on artificial intelligence, the more power accumulates into the hands of the few controllers who own four critical pillars. We're talking about the data, the computing infrastructure, the algorithms, and the digital platforms. It is a massive, unprecedented centralization of societal operating power. The research frames it with this profound, undeniable reality. Dependency is not just technical. It is political and economic. We really have to look at this impartially and recognize the gravity of the situation. This raises massive civilizational questions about who truly controls these intelligence systems. Because if a handful of platforms mediate all of our knowledge, they inherently mediate our politics and our economies too. Which brings us to a pretty terrifying unknown. What happens when economies rely on systems that very few people actually understand? Can AI manipulate public opinion? Will humans even be able to distinguish truth from synthetic content anymore? When the very bedrock of our society operates inside a black box, our vulnerability to public manipulation absolutely skyrockets. And as we face that vulnerability, we hit the real climax of this entire narrative, the ultimate psychological struggle of our age. If AI surpasses humans in many intellectual tasks, if it can outthink us, outwrite us, outcalculate us, what remains uniquely human? For centuries, intelligence has been central to how we define our superiority as a species. AI shatters that assumption, forcing us to ask where our true worth actually lies. The answers the researchers suggest are genuinely beautiful, moving way beyond mere intellectual capability. We're talking about consciousness, morality, empathy, spirituality, wisdom, love, sacrifice, meaning-making. These are the core traits that define us. A machine can optimize a global supply chain, sure, but it cannot make a sacrifice for a loved one. It cannot derive profound meaning from an experience. Our humanity isn't defined by our ability to process data, but by our infinite capacity for wisdom and empathy. Which brings us to the final stage of our journey today. We've seen the risks, we've seen the shifting definitions of creativity and humanity, and now we must focus on the ultimate solution. We have to actively choose an intentional future. You see, the future of humanity is basically going to split into two groups. Group A, people who use AI intentionally as a tool to become far more capable. And Group B, people who surrender most of their thinking to AI systems simply out of convenience. And the dividing line that determines which of these two groups you or your children fall into, it all comes down to education. Building a strong AI-era education system is no longer just about teaching kids how to code. It requires deep roots in critical thinking, logic, philosophy, media literacy, systems thinking, creativity, ethics, and human communication. Because without this incredibly strong educational foundation, we risk creating a population that is highly connected through technology, but entirely intellectually fragile underneath it all. To bring all of this together, we really have to recognize that AI itself is entirely neutral. It's just a tool. It simply magnifies our existing tendencies. Used wisely, it will help us solve complex diseases, accelerate global education, reduce poverty, and unlock totally impossible scientific breakthroughs. But used poorly, it will weaken independent thought, deeply centralize global power, spread manipulation, and create a civilization fully dependent on systems it no longer understands. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, pretty striking thought. The real issue before us is not whether AI becomes intelligent, it is whether humanity remains intentional. Are you going to direct the machine today, or are you going to let the machine direct you? Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and I challenge you to carry that intentionality into absolutely everything you do.